I am so excited to introduce you to Dr. Neeta Bhushan. She's a cosmetic dentist turned best-selling author, transformational speaker, advocate of emotional health, and the host of the Brave Table podcast, which is absolutely phenomenal. She is the founder of the Global Grit Institute and co-founder of the Dharma Coaching Institute, and a three-time international best-selling author of multiple books. Long story short, she left her very successful dental practice to transform people inside and out across 45 countries as she researched blending the intersection of human behavior, ancient wisdom, Eastern philosophy, and therapeutic psychology, sparked by her own life experience of overcoming multiple adversities, which includes being orphaned at a young age, surviving an abusive marriage of domestic violence, and extensive loss. The power of her coaching and her message continues to transform the lives of thousands across the globe, from organizations to everyday people looking to step into their greatness. She's a mother of two and currently lives in Austin, Texas. For more information about her book, go to thatsuckednowwhat.com. We're going to talk all about this today, and I am so excited for you to get to meet this powerhouse, this kind soul, this amazing person. So let's jump right in. I am so excited to have you on this show today. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes. Thank you, Allison. I'm Dr. Neeta Bhushan, and I am the host of the Brave Table podcast. I'm also a mother of two. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and my passions lie in emotional health and mental well-being. So here we are.
I love this. We're going to have a great conversation today. Would you mind just sharing a little bit more of your background and how you got to this place? Because this wasn't the initial career path, right? So you started another industry.
Oh my gosh. Well, if we had to go back, wow, that would be a really long episode. But so I was born and raised in Chicago, and to immigrant parents. My dad was from India, my mom was from the Philippines. And my, very first career was like what every brown person should become, right? Doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer. And so that's literally what I did. I was not all of those things, although that would probably be, that would check their boxes for sure. But I was a cosmetic dentist, and I had a huge practice in the suburbs of Chicago, if you're familiar. And yeah, and I grew it to, very big, very fast. I was not even 30, was over seven figures. I had an entire team. I really knew, and that was kind of one of the skill sets that I learned so easy and fast, just growing up early. I mean, at 10 years old, I was a caretaker to my mother, and kind of she endured this slow battle with breast cancer. And so from 10 to 16, that was literally, my childhood was spent in and out of hospitals, not for me, but for caretaking of my mother. And then a year after my mom died, my brother suddenly collapsed in front of his high school, and he was 15 years old, and I was a senior in high school. And so there I am, wanting to go away to college so bad, and got into all of my dream schools and couldn't, because I had to take care of the family. And then 2 years later, we would get another traumatic blow. And it was my father who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so it's a lot. So at 19, I lost my mother, my brother, and my father. And so that would definitely inform me being really good at negotiating and business and a lot of external things, studies, etc., because I buried a lot of my own grief, my own sadness, my own trauma for pretty much 2 decades. And so my biggest rock bottom really hit after, I had my first 7 figures, and I'm barely 29 years old, but I'm in a marriage that I knew was toxic, and I knew was, it wasn't that happy, fairy tale ending. And I knew I had to get out, and I knew I was stuck. So I needed to really come to terms with getting clear on saying yes to myself. And defying everyone around me and all of my traditional family members who wanted something different for me, and really claiming my voice. And so that's when I regained my voice at 30, leaving that toxic marriage that really gave birth to everything that I would be doing now, which is, healing and emotional health, and really leading from the feminine, and really honoring the way that our truest essence of who we are and what makes us come alive, and through the kind of crumbling and the falling. And for anybody who's been through a divorce or any sort of loss or any sort of trauma, those are big life happenings. And for me, it was a coming back to myself and a rebirth. It was painful, it was dark, it was all of the things that we know, but being able for me to say yes, and to remove this facade of I have to be strong, because I had to be strong when I was 10 and 15 and 17 and 19. And just to let it all fall apart, because in the falling apart was when I was able to regain the strength and the love back to myself that really, I so desperately needed to release all of that, pent up grief, sadness, anger, frustration for 2 decades. So,
And your story is so powerful. And I'm sure that for those listening, there's pieces of it. You've gone through so much, right? And
ooh,
there's so many pieces that others can say, I went through that too, or I feel really stuck, or, I feel like my life has crumbled, or things are so different and I'm not where I want to be. But you provide so much hope for those listening, and you teach people really how to bounce back and to find themselves again. So can we talk a little bit about that? I'd love to kind of stay here and share more about what you do to help people kind of emerge right after difficulties and really find themselves and connect and live their authentic lives and everything. So can you share more about that?
yeah. And so, throughout my research, after I realized that, we all have stories, and we all have setbacks, we all have challenges, we all had adversities, and it gives rise to a better version of us, right? In the moment, it sucks, and it sucks really bad. And for most of my early life, I did not want to embrace the suck or the sucky moments that were happening. And until I really allowed myself to really sit in the suck of my divorce that didn't go well, of the relationship that I suppressed my own feelings, and then to walk a different path. I started to then research and work with thousands of different people, from, shamans, psychedelics, to therapists, different modalities of healing, to really come to terms and really understand how we all make decisions. And it took me, going to 45 different countries, interviewing over 500 people, coming up with my first book, Emotional Grit, and then kind of segueing it to this term that I've now started talking about just in all different ways, but this term that we have called the bounce factor. And there's 4 different ways that we actually can increase our bounce factor. If you are stuck, if you are feeling that, oh man, I can't deal with another thing happening. I just talked to a girlfriend yesterday, and she's like, this thing's out of whack. My kid's screaming and crying. I have an elderly parent that's not doing well. And we're in this stage of our lives where we have smaller children and we might have aging parents. And then we stop, our own businesses, because it's like, I have to take care of everybody else. But can we increase our bounce factor so that when life happenings do happen, that we're not so overwhelmed? And there's 4 criteria to that. The first one is to really understand your upbringing and, how you were raised. Were you in an an area or, in your family? Did they even voice your opinion? Were your opinions even valid? Were you forced to become a doctor, dentist, lawyer? Or was that like the norm, and that, that was really all you had, so that you couldn't really express yourself? Number two. Number three, were you raised by helicopter parents, or or were you raised kind of like, you know, street cred and doing things on your own? So you can't change your upbringing, but what you can do is make peace with it. And most of us, either we shy away from it or we distract ourselves because it's too hard to start reconciling or healing the past. So that's the first. The second is good stress. And what I mean by that is, how often are you exposing yourself to new things in your environment? And so for anybody who is afraid to speak, speak up in a crowd or at the boardroom, or speak up your boundaries and share when something is off or wrong, how can you increase that every single day so that you are exposed to good stress? And some examples of this could be, do you like taking cold showers? Like, that's a physical response to positive stress, because we know all the good stuff from cold water, right? We know cold plunge. We know that it activates endorphins, it fat loss, all of the things. It wakes us up, it energizes us. But most of us, like even myself, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to sit in that water for a minute, but maybe I'll take a 10-second cold shower. And maybe tomorrow it could be 15 seconds. And I'm using an analogy of, cold water as something that could be as easy as maybe getting your hands dirty and playing in the dirt with your kids. Another example of good stress that you can expose yourself to. Or even maybe if you have your business, you can go live on Instagram, or on Facebook, right? And without any prepared notes, just go live and really tune in. And some of you probably are listening to this and like, oh my God, I would never, ever do that. But that is an example of good stress, right? And so that's number two, exposing yourself to good stress. Number three is your emotional capacity. What is that capacity for you to feel? Because like I said before, during tough times, and I did it too early or in my life, where I would avoid, I would distract, I would numb. And we have a very cute little device that we could numb ourselves with. And that's like the dopamine advice, right? Device, which is our phones, right? All we need to do is swipe and swipe and swipe, and we activate our brains in a different way. And we can forget all of the shitty things that happened in the day. But what if we did allow ourselves to stretch where it was uncomfortable, to really feel when it was really discomforting, because that's when we grow the most. And then finally, the awareness piece. So the last piece of this bounce factor is your own awareness. I was not aware before that I had a lot of this healing to do, even though I've seen therapists and I grew up with therapists my whole life. But it was not until I actually took personal responsibility throughout a lot of the things that I invited in my life. And so for you, if you are feeling stuck, if you are attracting the same kinds of patterns or bad employees or bad team members or bad situations, or thing just doesn't seem like anything's working at this point, where are you neglecting yourself? Right? Where are you having the gaps and the blind spots where you can't really see, or you're not paying attention to, or you're still avoiding? How can we actually have more awareness? And it starts with just as simple as our body, right? Have you ever wondered what it feels like? And you can tune into your body and take 10 seconds for this, but can you focus on your right toe right now? Does it feel weird or icky, or maybe it feels like, oh my gosh, I've been wearing those high heels and that does feel kind of hurts. And how does it feel in relation to your left big toe? And you can do this with every single part. Now you can move that up and you can pay attention to your right ankle versus your left ankle. And you can just take a breath there. And so it starts with that body awareness of ourselves, where do we feel tension? Is it your right shoulder versus your left shoulder? Maybe it's your right hip that has a lot more pain than your left hip. Or maybe your right side of your head is having more tension than your left side of your head. It starts with just tiny little awareness practices like that to see, hey, then we can make those bigger decisions like, I was going to hire this person today, but there was something off with that person. And I'm going to trust it this time because usually I don't trust it. And I see everything on paper and I'm like, man, they're great. And they can solve all the problems for me. But I didn't check in with my gut. And we have way more neurons in our gut than we do in our brain, yet we avoid that. So if we can fine tune that, that's really increasing our bounce factor that we can have every single day so that when tough moments happen, whether it's getting a parking ticket or getting stopped by a police officer because they thought you were speeding, to your right-hand person quitting on you, to, a big relationship ending, that's how we can actually move forward and even fly forward.
Well, Neeta, this was so powerful. Thank you. Because
You're welcome.
I mean, you really shared so many valuable pieces of wisdom too, of really how to check in with yourself, right? And then what to do. And I think ultimately when hard things happen too, our body's natural tendency is to fight, flight, or freeze. And, in addition to numbing and distracting and, avoiding and all of these things, we have to just be so mindful of what's happening around us and giving ourselves the grace and the space and the support and allowing ourselves to receive the support too is so important, because we don't have to do this alone. We don't have to figure it all out by ourselves, but we do need to be mindful and we do need to look for our solutions and guidance along the way. And you just have so many wonderful things to share with the world. And you've written books. You've got another one in the works. You've got an awesome podcast. So can you share with everybody more about what you have birthed to the world in addition to the beautiful children that you have already?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. My next book, That Sucked. Now What? How to embrace the joys and chaos and find magic in the mess. That is coming out in early 2023. So January of 2023, I'll share with you all where you can pre-order the book and get some really exciting bonuses. So that is really my life's work and kind of all of the things that I have even integrated from my very first book, Emotional Grit, in 2016, and now putting it all together because now as a mom of two and several different businesses where I either co-teach or co-facilitate, there's a lot on our plates, and how can we actually embrace the chaos there? And I talk about brave moments on, the Brave Table podcast. And so, yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well at Neeta Bhushan.
Excellent. Well, and we are readers here, so I'm sure everybody's going to pick up a copy of your books, but who else do you recommend for the audience to either listen to or read?
Oh gosh, there is this book that just came across my desk and it is called Us by Terrence. Am I getting his name? Terrence Real. Yes. And it's amazing when you are navigating through relationships and interpersonal relationships and even love relationships. And so my husband and I have committed to like one book, a month that we are both actually diving into together because we're in the thickness of it. I just told Allison before I got on the podcast that my kids are 1 and 3. And so, it's so important to kind of have that container for ourselves. And so for anybody who is in the thickness of it too, or just wants to rekindle that either for themselves, the book, it's called Us by Terrence. I think it's Terrence Real. R-E-A-L.
Love that. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to add that to the show notes too. We love good books, and it is important. You got to take care of those relationships, right? Like it's so important to have that time with your spouse, your partner, the special person in your life, and to be able to read something like that together is fabulous. One more question for you before we go though. What does confidence mean to you?
Oh, confidence. It means that you are brave enough to know that there may be fear around the things that you are doing, but you are going to be unapologetic and do it anyway.
I love that. We can end it right there. That was perfect. So thank you so much for being on the show today. Grateful for you. Thank you for all you do for others. And it's just been a real pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Allison. I love this.